Good morning, boys and girls. I'm so glad that you could all come this morning for story time. My name is Mrs. Miller, and I'm from the Montgomery County Norristown Public Library. And I'm so glad to have you, the kindergarten class from St. Patrick's School in Norristown, here today. Our first story is about friends. It's about two little boys, and their names are Robert and Peter. And they're best friends, but one day Peter moves away, and we're going to see how both of the boys feel about that in our story called We Are Best Friends, and the author and the illustrator's name is Aliki. Peter came to tell Robert the news. "I am moving away," he said. "You can't move away," said Robert. "We are best friends." "I am moving far away," said Peter. "What will you do without me?" asked Robert. "Who will you play with?" "We will live in a new house," said Peter. "You will miss my birthday party," said Robert. "I will be going to a new school," said Peter. "Who will you fight with?" Peter is the friend of Robert. Who will you fight with?" asked Robert. "Nobody fights like best friends." "I will make new friends," said Peter. "You can't move away," said Robert. "You will miss me too much." But Peter moved away. There was nothing to do without Peter. There was no one to play with. There was no one to share with. There was no one to fight with, not the way best friends fight. There was no fun anymore. "I'll bet Peter doesn't even remember me," said Robert. "It's a good thing he's not here. I'd have to punch him one." "Hello." Look what happens. "Hello, my name is Will," said a new face. "I don't like freckles," thought Robert. "I used to go to another school," said Will. "I don't like glasses," thought Robert. "My friends are all there," said Will. "I don't like silly names like Will," thought Robert. "It was fun," said Will. "Not boring like this place." A letter came for Robert, a letter from Peter. And here's what the letter says. "Dear Robert, I hope you still remember me. I like my new house now. I like my new school now. At first, I didn't like anything. But now I have a friend, Alex. You are my best friend, but Alex is nice. It is fun to have someone to play with again. It's not so lonely. Love, Peter." Robert drew Peter a letter. He drew two friends building a fort. He drew them playing with their cars. He drew them riding their bikes. He wrote, "If you were here, this is what we'd be doing, but you're not." And then he wrote, "There is a new boy in school. He has freckles." Robert saw Will by the fence. "Did you lose something?" he asked. "I thought I saw a frog," said Will. "That's funny, looking for a frog," said Robert. "What's funny about it?" "I like frogs," said Will. "I used to have a pet frog named Greenie. He'd wait for me by the pond near where I lived. He must miss me a lot." "I know there are frogs," said Robert, "right in my garden." "You're just saying that," said Will. "I mean it," said Robert. "You can see for yourself." "If I had a frog in my garden, I'd share it," said Will. "That's what I'm doing," said Robert. Robert and Will rode home together. They went straight into the garden. The frogs were there. One leaped under a bush, and Will caught it. "I'll call you Greenie the Second," he said. "You like me already, don't you?" "The frogs lay their eggs here every year," said Robert. "It's almost time. My friend Peter used to come watch the tadpoles. He called them Inky Wiggles. He'll miss them." "Why?" asked Will. "He moved away," said Robert, "just about the time you came. I write him letters." "Then you can write him about the Inky Wiggles," said Will. They laughed. "I haven't had so much fun since I moved here," said Will. "Neither have I," said Robert. Robert wrote to Peter. "Dear Peter, I can't wait until summer when you come to visit. The new boy is called Will. I showed him the frogs. He had a pet one near his home, but he had to move away like you. He thinks Inky Wiggles is fun. I'll write when they hatch. Love, Robert. P.S. How is Alex? P.P.S. Hope to see you soon." Robert mailed the letter and then rode over to Will's house to play. So Robert and Will did become good friends, didn't they? The end. Well, our next story is, oh, this is a good story. It's about a special kind of pet that you can have called a chameleon. A chameleon is like a lizard, but he can do something very special. He can change colors from brown to red to green to yellow. And this chameleon's name is Furry, and we're going to see why he's called Furry in our book by that name by Holly Keller. Laura wanted a pet. First, Mama said no, and Papa said no. Then Mama said maybe, and Papa said nothing. So Laura waited. But when Mrs. Bentley's dog had puppies, and Laura hugged and petted them, she sneezed until her nose was red and sore. When Alfie found a kitten in the schoolyard and brought him home for keeps, Laura's eyes began to tear, and Alfie gave the kitten to their neighbor. The new bunnies in the science room made Laura break out into a rash, and Gloria Goldberg's guinea pigs made her wheeze. When Benny brought his gerbil in for show and tell, Laura's face swelled up like a balloon, and even Ellen's parakeets made her head ache. It's allergies, Dr. Cooper said. Don't get too close to birds or pets with fur. And Laura cried. The next day, Alfie caught a bullfrog in the pond. You can have him for a pet, he told Laura, but Laura wouldn't look at it. Alfie's friend Susan said Laura could have her water snake, but Laura screamed and ran into the house. A goldfish would be nice, Mama said, or a turtle, Papa suggested, but Laura shook her head. Only pets with fur are fun, she said, and Laura moped. Then Alfie saw a picture in a magazine that gave him an idea. He whispered it to Mama, who said no. Then he told it to Papa, who said maybe. And on Saturday, Alfie and Papa went to the pet store. What is it, Laura asked when Alfie put the box on the table. A pet, Alfie said, and Laura frowned. She opened the box a crack and looked inside. Ugh, she said loudly, and she slammed the lid shut. It looks like a dragon with measles. You have to watch him, Alfie said. So Laura watched. Okay, Alfie, Laura said. How did you do that? And you see he's changing from brown to green. Alfie just smiled. Laura ran her fingers down the little chameleon's back. Wow, she said out loud, and Mama laughed. He needs a good name, Papa said. Furry, Alfie blurted out, and this time even Laura laughed. Do you like him, Alfie asked. Yes, Mama said. Yes, Papa said, and Laura said maybe. But Laura said, can he sleep in my room? Of course, Mama said, and after dinner, Laura took Furry upstairs. And that's the end of that story. And we have one last story for you today. And you might have heard this one before. It's Goldilocks and the Three Bears. And it's retold and illustrated by James Marshall. And this version might be a little bit different than you heard, but it's basically the same story. Let's see what happens. Once there was a little girl called Goldilocks. What a sweet child, someone in town said. That's what you think, said a neighbor. One morning, Goldilocks' mother sent her to buy muffins in the next village. You must promise not to take the shortcut through the forest, she said. I've heard that bears live in there. I promise, said Goldilocks. But to tell the truth, Goldilocks was one of those naughty little girls who do exactly as she pleases. Meanwhile, in a clearing deeper inside the forest is a charming house all their own. A family of bears lived there, and they were sitting down to breakfast. Patooey, cried big old Papa Bear. This porridge is scalding. I've burned my tongue. I'm dying, cried Baby Bear. Now really, said Mama Bear, who was of medium size. That's quite enough. I know, said Papa Bear. Why don't we go for a spin while the porridge is cooling? "Excellent," said Mama Bear. So they got on their rusty old bicycle and rode off to town. A few minutes later, Goldilocks arrived at the bear's house. She walked right in, without even bothering to knock. On the dining room table were 3 inviting bowls of porridge. "I don't mind if I do," said Goldilocks, helping herself to the biggest bowl. But the porridge in the biggest bowl was much too hot. "Patooey!" cried Goldilocks, and she spat it out. Next, she tasted the porridge in the medium-sized bowl, but that porridge was much too cold. Then Goldilocks tasted the porridge in the little bowl, and it was just right, not too hot and not too cold. In fact, she liked it so much that she gobbled it all up. Feeling full and satisfied, Goldilocks thought it would be great fun to have a look around. Right away, she noticed a lot of coarse brown fur everywhere. "They must have kitties," she said. In the parlor, there were 3 chairs. "I don't mind if I do," she said, climbing into the biggest one. But the biggest chair was much too hard, and she couldn't get comfortable. Next, she sat in the medium-sized chair, but that chair was much too soft, and she thought she might never get out of it. Then Goldilocks sat in the little chair, and that was just right. Neither too hard nor too soft. In fact, she liked it so much that she rocked and rocked and rocked until the chair fell completely to pieces. Now, all that rocking left Goldilocks quite tuckered out. "I could take a little snooze," she said, so she went to look for a comfy place to nap. Upstairs were 3 beds. "I don't mind if I do," said Goldilocks, and she got into the biggest one. But the head of the biggest bed was much too high. Next, she tried the bed of medium size, but the head of that bed was much too low. Then Goldilocks tried the little bed, and it was just right. Soon she was all nice and cozy and sound asleep. She did not hear the bears come home. The 3 bears were mighty hungry, and when they went in for breakfast, they could scarcely believe their eyes. "Somebody has been in my porridge," said Papa Bear. "Somebody has been in my porridge," said Mama Bear. "Somebody has been in my porridge," said Baby Bear, "and has eaten it all up." In the parlor, the 3 bears were in for another surprise. "Somebody has been sitting in my chair," said Papa Bear. "Somebody has been sitting in my chair," said Mama Bear. "Somebody has been sitting in my chair," said Baby Bear, "and broken it to smithereens." The 3 bears went upstairs on tiptoe, not knowing what they would discover. At first, everything seemed fine, but then Papa Bear lay down on his big brass bed. "Somebody has been lying on my bed," he cried, and he was not amused. "Egads!" cried Mama Bear, "somebody has been lying in my bed." "Look!" cried Baby Bear, "somebody has been lying in my bed, and she's still there." "Now, see here!" roared Papa Bear. Goldilocks woke up with a start, and her eyes nearly popped out of her head. But before the bears could demand a proper explanation, Goldilocks was out of bed, out the window, and on her way home. "Who was that little girl?" asked Baby Bear. "I have no idea," said Mama Bear, "but I hope that we never see her again." And they never did. And boys and girls, that's the end of our story time today. I want to thank you very much for coming here for the story time, and please visit us at the library too.